This is part two of the three stages of U.S. martial law and the implementation of martial law, and why ultimately at the end of this video I'll try to explain why I don't think that it will actually work or will take place. We're going to pick up where we left off. Recently, the Department of Homeland Security sponsored a self-study entitled Homeland Security and Intelligence: Next Steps in Evolving the Mission, in which the Department of Homeland Security proclaims that they are no longer concerned with foreign-inspired terrorism. They are only going to focus on domestic terrorism, ostensibly against the American people. Does the DHS purchase 2.2 billion rounds of ammo, the acquisition of 2,700 armored personnel carriers, and the beta test of martial law in Boston last April begins to make a great deal of sense. Total control over the country through a false flag event scenario seems entirely likely, given the pre-positioned of assets by DHS. Now, I would say one thing here. I have seen evidence that there have been some rather large purchases of hollow point rounds of ammunition, and I've definitely seen evidence and know for a fact that mine-resistant vehicles, MRAP vehicles, have been delivered to local police stations around the country. Even in Boise, Idaho, Nampa, Idaho, they have received their MRAP vehicles. They received them for a total cost of like $10, even though they were $600,000 vehicles. However, I don't believe that even with all these rounds of ammunition that they have enough personnel to carry this out, in which I'll get into more here in just a moment. The real purpose behind the creation of this American version of the East German Stasi secret police was to monitor and control the American population. Unfortunately, the Department of Homeland Security has shared its high-tech toys with most police departments and sheriff's departments, and has, as a result, co-opted their local function. In other words, the federalization of the local police forces in violation with the 10th Amendment is well underway. The early returns on this process are in, and the results are extremely ugly. And through the federalization of local police departments, Department of Homeland Security is acquiring manpower to enforce its soon-to-be martial law edicts. Now, it is true that they are attempting to bring in the local police departments, whether it be your city police departments or your sheriff departments. However, many sheriff departments have stated publicly and even written letters to the President of the United States saying that the federal government will not be allowed to come in and place their areas of the country under martial law. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be attempted. Doesn't mean that some areas will go under some form of martial law. The importance of PDD 51 cannot be overstated. Further support comes from the Presidential Decision Directive 51, which handed President Obama dictator status in times of declared and not necessarily real national emergencies. PDD 51 is a Bush-era executive order that gives the president dictatorial power in times of national emergency. Eliminates any roadblock to declaring martial law in the United States. It gives Obama the power to suspend elections. Under this arrangement, Obama could have 50 Watergate type of scandals hanging over his head, and he does not have to worry about leaving office. Stage 2 in the abrogation of civil liberties. At the time of presidential's choosing, the federal government may take over all forms of energy, all forms of civil transportation, all usable water from all sources, all commodities and products that are capable of being ingested by either human beings or animals, health resources, drugs, biological products, medical devices, materials, facilities, health supplies, services. And of course, there has been an executive order, in which she's going to talk about here in a second, that has been put in place that they're trying to claim that they have the ability to do this. Can there be any doubt? When the first false flag event occurs, America will witness the implementation of Obama's Executive Order 13603. In Section 601 of Executive Order 13603 signals the most Orwellian aspect of this executive order, in which, upon request by the Director of the Selective Service and in coordination with the Secretary of Defense, assists the Director of Selective Service in development of policies regulating the induction and deferment of persons for duty in the armed services. What is particularly troubling is that the Secretary of Labor will possess oversight over the Selective Service process instead of the Secretary of Defense. The revelation left me scratching my head as I wondered why the Department of Labor be in charge of a coming military draft. Then it dawned upon me that we were not just talking about military conscription. I refer to the 2008 presidential campaign, in which Obama stated that we need to construct a national civilian security force just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded. And I do remember him saying that. You know, that's FEMA for you. And the Department of Homeland Security, of course. Obama is clearly planning to conscript civilians, train them, and send them where they are needed, and will pay them whatever wage the Secretary of Commerce determines. Section 601, paragraphs 3, 4, Section 801, paragraph Z. In one fell swoop, Obama has sidestepped the 13th Amendment as we are talking about the introduction of forced labor, indentured servitude, slavery. Under Executive Order 13603, the Secretary of Transportation has given control over civil transportation, which includes movement of persons and property by all modes of transportation in interstate, intrastate, and foreign commerce within the United States, its territories and possessions, and the District of Columbia, which is owned by Britain and formed in 1871, and related public storage and warehousing, ports, services, equipment, and facilities such as transportation carrier shop and repair facilities. Civilian transportation also shall include direction, control, and coordination of civil transportation capacity regardless of ownership. Section 801, Part A. There can be no doubt that this expanded surveillance program of the TSA, in their unconstitutional practices of hands down our pants Viper program, is designed to control all travel in the United States. The former Soviet Union used to have checkpoints every 20 miles in order to restrict travel and to prevent the congregation of revolutionary forces for purposes of opposing government control, as well as to limit the ability of political dissidents to flee from their governmental pursuers. I feel compelled to ask, what is the government going to do that it is so nefarious and so intrusive that they are seeking to set up a control grid which will accomplish these same goals? Well, what they're planning to do, or what they would like to do, is completely enslave you, to have you living as if you were in a third world country, to have you dependent on them. You know, food stamps, welfare, where you can live, where you can work, what you can do, how much money you make, which will be very little, meaning how much actual results you get from the sweat and the work that you do on a daily basis. They already are transferring the majority of that to them via the economic system that is in place currently. Under EO 13603, the Secretary of Energy will have control over energy, which means all form of energy, including petroleum, gas, both natural and manufactured, electricity, solid fuels, including all forms of coal, chemicals, coal liquefaction, coal gasification, solar, wind, and other types of renewable energy, atomic energy, and the production, conservation, use, control, distribution, including pipelines of all these forms of energy. This means the government will have total control over all utilities, the installation of smart meters along with the implementation of smart grid, and the amount of energy which can be consumed by the average Americans will be severely curtailed under this new system of energy. Feudalism, which is to be imposed on the new American serfs. Obama, in the 2008 presidential campaign, stated that under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Previously ignorant Americans will soon come to know the true meaning and the pathetic meaning of these words. Section 801, Part B. Starving Americans into submission. Stalin did it, Hitler did it, and now Obama has the ability to do it via food stamps and welfare. In Stage 2 martial law, if you want to eat, you must obey. The Secretary of Agriculture will possess over fertilizer, which means any product or combination of products which contain one or more elements of nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium for use as plant nutrient. The Secretary of Agriculture will also control food resource facilities, which will explain a lot of times why, some of y'all guys may have noticed in your local cities that the Walmarts are being fortified. In some cases, they're even putting up gates and putting up fences around the Walmarts, installing the first pieces of the pieces that would be able to be in place so that they could put them together quickly. Okay. Says we'll also control food resource facilities, which means plants, machinery, vehicles, including on-farm and other facilities required for the production, processing, distribution, and storage, including cold storage of food resources, and for the domestic distribution of farm equipment and fertilizer. This is the total control of all food. This will allow Monsanto, which demonstrably controls the Department of Agriculture, the FDA, the EPA, to move forward unabated for the total GMO takeover of our food supply. Even more disturbing is that a few men will have total control over the food production, and the dissenting masses who oppose this fascist takeover can be effectively starved into submission or starved to death. Section 801, Parts C through F. There can be no doubt as to the Secretary of Defense will be placed in charge of all water resources. Section 801, Part N. I can draw no other conclusion that placing the control of water under the Department of Defense represents the weaponizing of water, and the intended target of this full frontal assault are the American people for the purpose of imposing population control and complete compliance. I hearken back to the movie The Hunger Games. This is exactly what lies in our future with regard to martial law rollout, which reaches Stage 2. What will it be like to live under martial law? In summary, Stage 2 martial law will follow a false flag event in which the internet will be taken down, all bank accounts, pension funds, 401s will be frozen and stolen. Extreme travel restrictions will be put in place. Random house-to-house searches will be conducted. Don't forget about the 386,000 foreign troops, which I'm not sure I believe, to be quite honest with you, which just completed their training on American soil. What will they be looking for? Of course, they will be looking for guns and false flag events, or at the false flag events, and will give them the pretext to do so. And they will also be looking for known troublemakers. We will all be living in a society where we can be singled out for persecution or worse. We will all have to watch every word we say as it was in the Soviet Union. Your young children will be used to spy upon and tattle on you at their school, and of course you will be totally dependent upon the government for food, water, and shelter. Traveling will be impossible. That you will be content just to huddle in your home when the false flag events commence. We will look at these days as the good old days. No, in order for all these events and all this information to take place, you have to comply. You have to agree, and you have to be a wuss, and you have to not do nothing, not say nothing, not show nobody nothing, not do anything. And you certainly have to use authority over logic instead of logic over authority.